Hey guys, Sharpend here. In this video we're going to be recreating the main keys synth from Post Malone's new song with Doja Cat, I Like You, A Happier Song. It sounds something like this. Okay, so the sound that we're going to be recreating is the intro keys from his song I Like You. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty sure it's like an Omnisphere patch or an Analog Lab patch just thrown in with some RC20 to make it sound lo-fi. But since we're making sound design videos, we're going to actually try and recreate that from scratch. So first of all, I got the MIDI, which is this thing. And I opened Pigments. So let's hear how it sounds without any external effects. Pretty basic, nothing too interesting. I've used the analog engine. I've set it to 3 triangle waves, but I've set the width all the way up, so it's almost a saw wave, but not exactly. There's a Jupiter 8 low-pass filter happening, and it has some resonance, and the cutoff is very low, and it's being opened up by an envelope that has very low attack and a pretty long decay, so you get something like this. In addition to that, the volume envelope has no sustain, it has some release and quite a bit of decay, 1.3 seconds. And then you hear that clicky sound. So in order to get that, I used another envelope which has 0 attack and a very short decay, like 32 milliseconds of decay. That's modulating the chorus pitch up, so that means that it goes up and then back down really fast, which gives us a clicky sound. And I also used it to open up the filter by a lot, so that the clicky sound is more noticeable and has more high frequencies. Let's hear it without the filter being opened up. It doesn't sound clicky at all, but once you open up the filter, again, this is done very briefly. You open it up very briefly, and you get that clicky sound in the higher frequency areas. So, as you can see, there's no unison. There's another engine, which is a wavetable engine, and I've selected a patch that sounds like it has a lot of weird overtones. It's in building waves, it's called soft tone, it sounds like this. So just pick something with a lot of harmonic content that can complement our basic saw wave thing. But as you can hear, it sounds sort of lo-fi and kind of like an old synth. And that's thanks to the LFO. So we have one LFO that's modulating the fine-tuning by 0.07. And as you can see, the rate is very low. It's at 0.1 Hertz, which is very slow, and it's free running. So it keeps modulating. And if I play a note, it doesn't start at the beginning again, which is important to keep that sort of moving, floating pitch sound of older synths. And in addition to that, there's another LFO, LFO2, which is at a faster rate, 5.5 Hertz. And it's again modulating the fine-tuning by a bit to create some vibrato. So let's hear it without these two, and let's bring them back. So it's very buoyant and stable. Let's add the vibrato, which is the fast LFO. It already adds a lot of movement, and let's bring the detune LFO. You can very slightly hear it. It's adding a touch of detuning, which makes it a bit more lo-fi and old and analog and all of that stuff, which is great. So this is it for the main patch. And now we need to add a lot of effects to make it sound more like the original. So let's start one by one. I'm going to mute them all. It sounds like this. And the first thing I decided to add is a gem, which is a dimension expander. It has a nicer subtle chorus touch. And then I've added the Arturia tape plugin, and I didn't use it to add some distortion or anything. I just used it to add some flutter, which is sort of like a vibrato, but like a tape malfunctioning vibrato. So a touch of that, but I did use it to bring some wow, which is the slow detuning effect that we added with LFO1. It's a bit less predictable, but it also adds a nice touch here. And then we can hear in the original that it's been reverbed out quite a bit. So I've used the rev plate by Arturia. I've blended it at like 0.24, which makes it noticeable, but it doesn't affect the dry too much, like a higher amount would. We want it to be pretty centered, but also a bit in the back, like not too much, like in the original. As you can hear, the original is a bit more filtered, so I've used a low pass filter with some resonance to low pass it a bit. So now we sort of hear clickiness, but we don't hear it too much, which kind of resembles the original. You can hear that it's a pluck, but you don't hear the clicks too much. And since it's a Post Malone song and he masters and mixes his songs to be as loud as possible, I just had to add some OTT. It's at 50% def, and the highs aren't being compressed that hard. We don't want too much gain on the highs. And I've also reduced the upwards compression, which is what gives OTT its crazy effect that like makes every little noise sound so noticeable. Let me demonstrate. As you can see, it sounds a bit less dense once you reduce the upward compression by a bit, and it's also at 50% depth, so it's not too much. It doesn't add a lot, but it does add some weight back to our synth. And since we're going for that lo-fi feel, I've decided to add isotope vinyl, which does pretty much the same thing as the wow and as the slow LFO. I've used the warp depth at like 18%. And it just does the exact same thing. It sort of fluctuates the pitch in this envelope form, this LFO form. And honestly, if you have RC20 or any like plugin that's similar to that, you can probably like remove this long chain and just use one instance of that to create all of that. Their presets there are very focused at that sort of sound. But yeah, so that's the main synth. And there's also like a choir synth in the back, a vocal synth. Ooh, girl, I like fit me in your plans, I like this thing. And I think the best way to recreate that is just to take any vocal sample that you have and resample it in a synth. So I just took a choir sample from Arturia in the vocal folder. And I've used the granular engine just to add a lot of granules happen in the same time so that we get a more unison sound. There's also a lot of unison. There's a filter being opened up and closing, and a low pass filter. And there's also an analog engine complementing the melody, the main sound a bit. It's very quiet, but it just brings a sense of tonality to the main sound. And there's also a delay, which is at a very short time and a very high feedback, so that the sound is a bit more sustained. And with the delay, it sounds like this. So it's a very basic patch, nothing too crazy. And then I think I just added some reverb. Yeah, the same reverb as the synth to sort of tie them together, because it sounds pretty much almost like the same sound in the original. And an OTT as well to also tie it a bit together. So you get this thing together. And that's it for the main synths. I sort of like replicated the drums just to see if it sounds similar, and it kind of does. So in case you ever get tired of these Omnisphere patches or Analog Lab patches or anything like that, you can now make your own key sound. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, and I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next video. For more content, make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram as well, and check out my playlists on the channel for other tutorials, track breakdowns, and my music as well.